We're back with Stephen Cobb and Gabby Orr. We got some news over the weekend of a new interesting supporter of Andrew Yang. In a tweet, Elon Musk says that he supports Yang. What do you think, Gabby?
Oh, I have so many thoughts about this. It kind of caught a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that Elon Musk was delving into politics at this point.
He's a big Democrat. He's a big Obama supporter. Yeah.
But he's been sort of, focused on building a coalition
Going
on
to
Mars,
yeah.
as opposed to backing a Democratic presidential candidate. I think that Andrew Yang has some unique level of support among, the tech people, Silicon Valley, and this might bring more people out of the woods.
Well, I
Jack
thought
Dorsey
it was interesting, Stephen. I mean, because Elon is obsessed with automation and with artificial intelligence, saying that it's going to wipe out all these jobs. He's very much an AI. He thinks it's going to be like Armageddon and a disaster for the U.S. So I guess it would make sense he supports Yang, because Yang is a UBI supporter. That's kind of the core message to what he speaks to. I mean, in terms of whether it's going to move anybody, I don't really think so.
I don't think it's going to move
yeah,
no.
Yeah, right. Maybe you donate. I mean, Jack Dorsey donated to Andrew Yang.
I mean, for me, this is the first actual Yang supporter that I can say, oh, that guy.
I know that person. Yeah.
I mean, I think for that point,
he's got that
kind of
going
a
for him,
sign-
which is nice.
It's kind of a sign of credibility. I mean, he's made now the next debate stage, right? It's going to be a much smaller group. And so certainly he and his campaign team are looking at these signifiers of credibility to make the case I'm more than just, more than just a sideshow here. I've got a real solution.
I saw him on Morning Joe this morning. I mean, he was sitting there. I think he had over 10, 15-minute spot talking about UBI. I mean, there's no question that he has moved the Overton window on this. Gabby, has Trump said anything about Andrew Yang?
Not to my knowledge, and I follow the president's comments pretty closely.
I'm waiting for that one. I want to see. Maybe you'll call him the money man. That's what I think.
No, he hasn't. But it is going to be interesting to see Yang on the debate stage, because I do think he's one of these candidates that has sort of this weird level of grassroots support that we don't see among some of the mid-tier Democratic candidates.
Yeah.
Like
He's acquitted himself well on the debate stage.
Yeah, he did a good job.
I mean, he has a good presence.
I keep saying this. He's the only person who talked about declining life expectancy, which is the ultimate metric of how a society is doing.
So true. So true. And the automation thing is real. I mean, economists say that to 50% of our jobs are threatened by automation. He's the only one who's really trying. So he has this interesting, Silicon Valley, a lot of futurists there, and they're on the cutting edge of the type of technology that already is replacing jobs. And then you have a lot of people in the industrial Midwest who have watched their jobs move overseas or be automated out of existence. So I think it's the start of a conversation here with Yang.
He certainly brings a unique perspective. I don't think Andrew Yang is going to be the Democratic nominee for president.
I don't know. He might be a sleeper pick. I also want to talk about Nate Silver. So Nate Silver has a very interesting new piece out today about, he says that it's wrong to think of Democratic candidates as necessarily in traffic lanes, that there is a lot of crossover support between Biden, Sanders, Clinton 2016 voters, and Sanders 2020, and that actually Elizabeth Warren draws roughly equally from a Clinton 2016 voter and a Biden 2016 voter, but that Bernie 2016 voter, but that Bernie has quite a bit of second-tier support. Now, I mean, it's easy to get lost in the weeds here, but to me, I mean, what Crystal and I have been taking a lot of look at is that nobody really understands that Bernie is a huge second choice candidate for a lot of these people. So not only does he have, Gabby, that first tier, the first support for many people, but if Biden were to bow out, that Bernie would actually get quite a bit of that support as well.
Or were to drop significantly in support.
Right. And not only that, but Bernie has support among independent voters as well that is pretty unrivaled with other Democratic candidates. I remember just back in 2016 being on the campaign trail in New Hampshire, where independent voters are one of the biggest voting blocs in that state, and talking to people who would go to a Trump rally and then go to a Bernie Sanders rally and tell me that they were somewhere in between. And ultimately, I think if you talk to those voters in November of 2020, they'd be casting their votes for Bernie Sanders. Yeah. So it's important to realize the support that he has not only among Democratic primary voters, but if Bernie Sanders does become the Democratic presidential nominee, what that would mean for Trump with independents.
What do you think about that, Stephen?
One of the things that 538 points out is that this isn't a static issue. And so part of the things that folks look at is electability. And so right now, when you have polls that come out and you have the high name recognition of a Biden or a Sanders, there's that kind of natural gravitating toward one of those those candidates because they are viewed rightly or wrongly as electable. Now, so you start to see other candidates come up and those things move around. I think you can see a large shift amongst those second-tier candidates. So someone now is saying that I'm Biden 1 and Bernie 2. It's because those are really two of the most high-profile candidates. So if other folks continue to move around, that could easily flow to a Warren, that could flow to a Mayor Pete, that can flow to a Steve Bullock. Who knows?
What Nate talks about is about dynamic support,
Prediction,
which is the
it's not
shifting.
Steve Bullock,
It's not going to Steve Bullock. It's about dynamic support within the election. So what I think it really does show is that it matters more about in the first states for those third-tier candidates like an Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris. We talked a lot about on the show about how Barack Obama's South Carolina support shot up in 2008 after it was proven that he could win the Iowa caucus.
Right.
So what does that tell us? That means that Iowa is a must-win or a must-show-up for Elizabeth Warren and for Kamala Harris and for Cory Booker.
Yeah.
Whereas a Biden or a Bernie, they could survive, a couple of primaries not hitting up at the top, but because their organizations are so big that they'd be okay.
It's interesting. It's one of those old phrases that says there's 3 tickets out of Iowa.
Right.
But I wonder with the size of the field as it is, and once it gets whittled down, does that mean there could be more now? Can
Is
there
that
be 4,
the case?
5?
Yeah.
I think so
Can there
too.
be 6 tickets out of
I just think it's so interesting, Gabby, because there's all these assumptions about the fact that, maybe Bernie and Warren are going to have similar voters because they're ideologically similar, and voters don't make up their minds that way. I mean, the fact that Biden and Bernie share more of a coalition than Bernie does with some people who are closer to him ideologically, I think it's just really fascinating.
It is. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's actually a good argument for the Sanders campaign to use heading into the Iowa caucuses and into New Hampshire, because you constantly hear from not just Democratic elites, but from individuals in the media as well, that Bernie Sanders just isn't electable, that he wouldn't be able to get Biden voters to coalesce behind him. And as we're seeing,
it's just not true.
It's just not true.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's sort of a powerful tool for the Sanders.
Again, I would push back on that notion a little bit, again, because I think that there are issues with the electoral voters and on a head-to-head, and I understand that those trends might not keep up against a random sampling across the country, but that doesn't mean that some of those trends wouldn't hold true in a Pennsylvania or a Michigan or a Wisconsin.
Yeah, always good to point out the Electoral College. Thank you to you both. We really appreciate it.
Great to see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Tomorrow on Rising, we take on the pulse of America's college students on the 2020 Democratic primary.
And we're going to examine the latest ramifications of the U.S.-China trade war with Asia expert Gordon Chang. That'll always be interesting. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.